Hello, and welcome to Superbwoman Sundays. I'm your host, Janet Neal, the founder and queen bee at the Superbwoman. I'm very happy to have you here with us tonight. So before we get started, let me just tell you I have a cold. I have my fingers crossed that I don't go into a coughing fit or sneezing. Just you're pre-warned. But I'm just so excited today to have my guest, Rossanna Figuera, with us. Now, it's going to be a great story. But before I get to that, let me tell you a little bit about the Superbwoman. I started the Superbwoman with the belief that women can change this world, and that so many of us either don't realize we have that kind of power or we're giving that power away. And so that's what we're all about, motivating women to live powerful lives that can help change this world in a positive way. Do that through a lot of different things, and the show is a great example of how women can take their lives and turn them around just by connecting with who they really are. That, to me, is real power. It's not about your position. It's not about your title. It's about being true to yourself. And as I've been going through life lately and meeting these amazing, superb women, I just want to go, oh my goodness, you're a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You've got to be on my show. And Rossanna is no exception to that. I met Rossanna a couple months back. I was doing a Woman's Sphere is the name of the organization. Annalisa Barnes runs this, and it's a fantastic organization also to help empower women. And it was a small group of entrepreneurs, and we were going around Manhattan, and we were going from location to location, meeting these very inspirational women entrepreneurs and hearing their story. And at lunchtime, we were lucky enough to go to Wafels and Dingus. Now, let me tell you, if you're in Manhattan, you probably are familiar with the yellow bus or the little yellow I don't know what you call them, little yellow stations all around the city parks. And in them, they serve the most delicious waffles, Belgian waffles. And we'll hear a little bit more about that from her. So not only did I get this amazing food when we went to her place, but I got to hear her story. It's amazing. Rossanna comes from Venezuela and came to the United States as a diplomat. In between what she's doing now and then, she was a banker, she had an executive search firm, and now it led to, and you'll find out how, to the #1 food truck in the country and beating Bobby Flay in a throwdown. Now, any of you who watch the Food Network know that is something. So without any further ado, Rossanna, I want to welcome you to our show tonight.
Thank you, Janet.
I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
So, like I was telling everybody, you have this amazing restaurant, and what do you call the little things that are in the parks?
Those are our food carts. So our trucks and carts.
Excellent, excellent. But that's kind of the end of the story, or where you are today. So why don't you take us back to, Venezuela and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, sure. I'm happy to share my story. So yes, effectively, I was born in Venezuela, and I grew up and born and raised in Venezuela. I went to college in Venezuela, and I must say that in hindsight, when I look at my life and reflect in what Venezuela meant to me, and the fact that that was my upbringing, there are two things that really highlight things that shaped me very importantly in life. So one thing is that I grew up in a house where my parents constantly reinforced the fact that I could do anything I wanted to do in life. So they, since a very young age, told me and nothing was impossible. life is as big as your dreams, basically. And although, I come from a relatively humble family. I am the first generation to go to college. My parents didn't even finish high school, etc. They did have these very big dreams on me, and I think that that's something that's play out a lot in throughout my life, without me realizing it, for the most part. So that was one thing. So when I was and I also always had, because I believed that things were possible, I always had this thing that whereby I would like to dream, and I would like to dream really big things. So I remember when I went to the Empire State Building for the first time, I was 16. I came to New York and I looked at the UN building from the Empire State, and I thought, this is so cool. This is the UN building, and I'm like, you know what? I want to work there one day. And I went back to after my summer vacation to Venezuela, and I went to college for international affairs. And after I finished college, I graduated and applied for the Foreign Service. I took the Foreign Service exam, and I did really well, and they accepted me in the Foreign Service. So that was the beginning of my first professional career, and it was as a member of the diplomatic corps in Venezuela. I spent my first 2 years in Venezuela. Sorry, I have a cold myself. And I got appointed. My first position outside of Venezuela was at the United Nations in New York. So 10 years took me since the moment I saw that building to the moment I got into the building. But that was the culmination of a big dream. Contrary to what anyone might think, living the dream is not always as shiny as you might think.
It was not so glamorous, huh?
Yeah. So that was actually like my first big encounter with reality in life, I think. Like, no, it's not always great when you get to where you want to go. The UN was a place that I was very young when I arrived. I was 24. I was, I think, the youngest diplomat there. I find the organization extremely slow. Nothing got done. It was just very, very difficult to move things. And for me, I was young and I really wanted to change the world. I wanted to change it really fast.
Right. And let me just ask you a question there, because I'm not familiar, and maybe some of our viewers aren't either. So what does a UN diplomat do?
Yeah, so as a representative from Venezuela, it was my role I was part of the Venezuelan mission to the UN, which is basically our diplomatic delegation to the organization. In my particular case, I was delegate to one committee of the UN. There are 6 operating committees in the UN, dealing from peacekeeping to social economic issues, human rights, disarmament, and finance and international law. So I was in the committee on international finance and trade, and basically you bring in the position of your country on issues on that sphere around the world. So I would negotiate the Venezuelan position on issues related to international trade and finance. And and sometimes, of course, I would have a larger delegation, a more experienced delegation with me to discuss certain issues. But for the most part, throughout the year, you are there. You are the face of the government on that committee, and it's all about negotiating and forging bridges and making bridges and creating relationships with other countries.
Quite an experience for a 24-year-old.
Yeah, it was. It would have been better if I would have had better mentoring. I also realized that, I achieved my dream very young, and I was very inexperienced. So it probably would have been almost better for me to have a couple of other assignments on my belt before coming to the UN. So probably I would have understood better the dynamics of politics, which I was completely naive to.
Right.
But I think again, in hindsight, I also didn't have many people that I could look up to and have them in return teach me how to do things. So I was I lacked quite a bit of guidance while at the UN, frankly. So, but moving on, those were, that was my encounter with my dream. It was not all glossy. I worked at the UN for about 5 years. I did a good job, and my ambassador, I was supposed to be here for 4. My ambassador at the time requested that I stayed, and I got involved with some important initiatives in in technology, like bringing technology to third world development countries, etc. So I get to work on some good stuff. It's just that you never see the results of your work, basically.
Right.
It just takes a long time. So in that process, the time came for me to leave. I was done. My 5 years had lapsed, and I had met a man in New York City who I was now engaged to marry. So I needed to stay in New York. And I started looking for a job, etc. And nobody really knew what to do with a diplomat. It's like, what do you do with a diplomat? Like, what are the skills, the hard skills? Are you good in finance? No. You're such a generalist. And it was just very difficult for me to place myself in this country and understand how my skills could play out. The interesting thing is that I resigned the UN and I decided to go for a second master's at NYU. And when I just started the master's, and I get a phone call on my cell phone, which at the time was not that common. Not a lot of people had cell phones back in the day, really. So I get a phone call from this girl who used to work at Chase, actually. And I used to be her liaison between Chase and the Venezuelan government.
Oh.
Having said, when I was looking for a job, I told her, listen, if you know of anything. But she says, listen, you don't have a finance background. It's very difficult for me to get you anything here at Chase. So she called me several months later because she called the mission to ask for a favor from me, and I wasn't there. So she says, what's happening? What have you done? I said, well, I left. She says, listen, we are trying to bring somebody here to work with us to do marketing for the research team. Do you want to interview? I said, sure, why not? I didn't know how to interview. I mean, I had never had to interview for anything. It's amazing how many things you learn when you grow up in a culture, right? But I call a good friend of mine who was a senior banker somewhere, and he told me, just be very professional. And I'm like, okay. But you know what? It worked, because then they hired me. I ended up, I went from the pinnacle of public service, which is the UN, to the pinnacle of private sector, which is American corporate banking.
Right.
So I started working with this very, very reputable research analyst in JP Morgan, in Chase. Then we got bought out by JP Morgan. And in Chase, I made my way up. I mean, I started as a marketing associate, and then, I did really well there. I had a very good way with clients. Clients like me, so my bosses were like, well, you really should be doing sales. You're very good with clients. And of course, sales is a very sought after position. There are very few spots. And I did great. I've continued doing emerging market sales, which for me, at this time, I was already starting to feel very interested in giving back. So it's just not working for the sake of it, but working for a higher purpose, right? And I did it intuitively at the UN, but I started to feel that it was more intentional when I started working in banking. So I basically started to feel that my job was very transactional. I mean, we're making a lot of money, but it was, buy here, sell there, buy here, sell there. And there was not much more, frankly, than that. I was not interacting with clients as much as I used to before now, because I was now a very small fish in a big, big pond. I was just starting in sales, so I was being given like very little accounts. And I started to think that I wanted to do my own thing. I thought about going into real estate. I actually took my broker's license. It was a very good time of the market. That didn't pan out. I took some time off from JP Morgan. And in that process, I got contacted by a recruiter. And that recruiter told me, what about you join us if you have all this network? Imagine I brought a network from the UN, from banking. You have all this network. We need somebody to run Latin America. And initially, I was like, no, thanks. Nobody really like grows up thinking I'm going to be a recruiter when I grow up. It's not, I'm an executive search, a headhunter, whatever. So, but I thought about the idea and I said, you know what, why not? They told me something really smart. They say to me, give it 3 months and see. And because I was in the time of my life when I really was exploring and I was very open, that resonated with me. And I said, you know what, let's do it. And I did. And, 3 months became the first year I learned the business. The second year I opened their office in Brazil. Their third year I was going to open the office in Mexico when I realized that, I really didn't need to be doing this for anybody else because these were my accounts, my work, etc. So I left and I started my own recruiting firm called the Talent Circle. The Talent Circle was very successful since the get-go because I did have great relationships with clients. Clients wanted to work with me. I had a good network in Latin America. So it was very good. Unfortunately, also Lehman Brothers was one of my largest clients. So 2008 was really, really difficult. But towards the end, and then 2009 was horrendous.
Right.
So, but we came back and then we recovered from the market. Now, something happened at the same time when I started my recruiting firm. So back in 2007, I left JP Morgan in 2004. Back in 2007, I was dating now Thomas, because that first marriage for which I stay here didn't pan out. So ultimately we got divorced in 2004. But I met my current husband. He's from Belgium. We actually met online in Match.com. So that's another thing about being open in life, right? You never know where things are going to lead you. And he was a consultant at IBM, a management consultant. I was doing a lot of business in Brazil with my business. And I said to him, you know what? Maybe we were walking down West Hampton Beach. And I said to him, listen, don't get too excited with this relationship because I'm thinking about moving to Brazil. And he said to me, well, I always thought that if I have to make a living anywhere, I can always make a living selling Belgian waffles on the streets. After all, I'm Belgian. And I turned around. At the time, I was a trained executive coach. And I said to him, okay, tell me more about that.
Like a good coach would do.
Totally. It's like, tell me more about that. And, he's like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about it. So that was really how Waffles and Dingus was born on a beach, on West Hampton Beach, on a conversation over moving to Brazil. And, that was the summer 2006. And we launched the company. We established it in 2006. We started up basically in June 2007. We were still considering it was going to start as a store. It never crossed our mind that it would be anything else but a store. We started designing the store. It would be a small store, grab and go. And in that process, we realized this was a very, very expensive investment. And we didn't know if people were going to like the product. People had, they have an idea of Belgian waffle in America, which is made with pancake batter on very simple waffle makers that you get when you get married.
Right.
So it's very different from a Liège waffle made out of dough and very dense and chewy, like the ones that you eat on the streets of Brussels, right? So we were kind of worried about the investment, and along right at the time we heard about a truck that was up for sale in New Jersey. And we went to see the truck and we said, you know what? This could work. The truck cost us $18,000. That was our initial investment.
Wow.
The cafe would have cost us 250 at
Oh,
least.
easy.
In
Yes.
in paper was 250, so you know that that's really not the number. But that was what we invested. We bought the truck, then took it to the paint shop and got married and left on honeymoon.
Wow.
That was, yes. And then in December, in October that year was Waffles and English hit the streets. Initially, I did not work in the truck because somebody needed to. My company was, as I said, was very successful, so we needed to keep that business going and make sure that we had enough financing
Sure.
in case the
Mhm.
Waffle Truck didn't work out. But contrary to, we always had very big hopes for the Waffle Truck. So it was picked up by the press very quickly because there were no other food trucks at the time. None, no gourmet food.
Timing is everything because
Yeah.
there's just a couple of them out there now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in New York, there are something like 100. So it got a lot of attention. We got picked by the New York Post. The New York Post had a big sign of my husband saying IBM executive is proud of waffling, which did with IBM. And but that waffle truck, that 1968 truck, broke repeatedly. And we didn't have enough money at the time to like replace things, or so we will we bought a second truck, but while the second truck came in, the first one had to be running because we didn't want to lose the few employees that we had now. We had 2 employees that were amazing. It's like, okay. So it was hard going at the beginning, also learning the rules of the street. That where you park, where you don't park, like you don't get involved with other trucks, things like that. In any case, that was back 2007. 2008 we bought a second truck. 2009 we got contracts with parks. We launched the carts. And now 2015 we have 2 trucks, 5 carts, 1 cafe, the one you went to in the East Village, a beautiful kiosk in Herald Square, which is a very iconic location right on
Right
30th,
across from Macy's.
right across from Macy's. And we just won a bid for the corner of 42nd and 6th on Bryant Park.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes, so we're very, very excited. And this is pretty much the story. It's long.
Oh, but it's a great story. So now are you doing that full time or do you still do the executive search?
Yeah, no, so in 2012, I very much dismantled Talent Circle and decided that this was going to be our family business. This is what we were going to grow. It was very difficult for Thomas to grow this on his own. So it's great. I had so much faith in this business always.
That's
So it
fab-
feels just very good to be leaving a legacy.
Yeah. Well, I heard a lot of different things in your story, but the things that really stood out for me is your willingness to be open
Yeah.
to new opportunities, that you had a network of people, that you like talked to people when you were ready to make a change, all of those things, and that you went back to what was important to you, that giving back, and how does that relate? And I think those are really key messages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, living I think that, and I used to say this to my friends when I coach them as well, to my clients, is, your career doesn't have to look like a straight line. Actually, better if it doesn't look like a straight line, as long as it goes forward. So
Right.
as long as it's leading you forward, it really doesn't have to be like this. It's actually, it can take any shape. And I just find that that's where I can take a lot of risk. I'm not very risk averse. Other people are more risk averse, but in my case, being open to the unknown many times shape my way in ways that I don't know how it would have been. It's difficult to say it would have been this other way, but
Right.
in between the known and the unknown, I always think I took the road less traveled.
Obviously, it's worked out nicely for you. So who has helped you on your road?
Yes, well, I think the first people who helped me were my parents and my family.
Mm-hmm.
They were always, as I said, very supportive family. My sister brothers, they were. Um, my brother actually helped me in a different way because I was his youngest sister and he was always on my case. So I think I developed a lot of resilience from my relationship with my brother.
Yep.
And I can appreciate that now, but he made me resilient, and my parents made me think that everything was possible. So that combination was huge. And then in my professional career, my the person who brought me aboard in JP Morgan really changed my life. To this day, she and I are very close. And I'm constantly checking in with her. And at different stages, it's been different people. Like right now, I'm very, very fortunate to have been honored. In 2010, I was honored as a Young Global Leader, which is an organization that is created by the World Economic Forum, this organization in Switzerland that meets every year in Davos, and it's this mysterious, rich and famous, not so rich and famous. They say these are the rich and famous wanting to change the world, but it's actually a phenomenal organization that brings together government, non-government, private sector, philanthropy, etc., to improve the state of the world. And I am part of this group of young global leaders, people under 40. At the time, I was under 40, who are doing something, and that for me has brought an incredible network of people that I can really access in all areas. Like right now, for instance, in my business, I am at a crossroads. I'm thinking, which way we're going to go. Do we need to, are we going to franchise? Are we going to look for capital? Are we going to continue self-financing? Those things. And the fact that I can feel comfortable, that I can have people who I can talk to about, okay, let's walk through scenarios. Help me expand my thinking. This is another thing. Your network is so essential in helping you expand your thinking. Because particularly when you're an entrepreneur, you can get so worked up and so narrow focus on what you do that it just becomes very difficult for you to see alternatives to any given solution. So,
very good point.
Yeah, look for people who think differently, always. People who you initially would say, this person is crazy. Listen to what they have to say. I think Bill Clinton was the one who said, like, always take feedback seriously, but not personal. So accept what other people have to say about you and about your situation, and then use all that information in a smart way.
Absolutely. So you just come across to me as a person who's very comfortable in their own skin, who is truly a superb woman. So, like, what kind of shoulds have you let go of in your life?
Oh, no, I think a lot of shoots. Well, first of all, again, I'm lucky that I didn't grow up in a society that requires too many should. I think that's key, because it's like it's not on your DNA. It's not on you should do this or should do that. I think one of them was the straight path that I mentioned to you. Particularly as a woman, many times you're tempted, or you see around you this straight path of, okay, I'm the one who makes the sacrifices, I'm the one who, arrange their lives around everybody else and all that stuff. I think that the straight path is very important, that it wasn't a shoot. The other shoot that didn't work for me was the marry young and have kids young. Well, I have my first kid at 39 and my second at 41. Now I have two little kids, but I feel that I did so much in life, so much. When the time they came, I was really ready,
Mm.
to have them. And and I think I like the type of mother I am. And I think that a lot of that had to do with where I am in my life.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So yeah, I do get that you listen to yourself for very good advice, as well as taking in what you hear from others. So I think those are really great, all very good advice. So what's next? You said that you're trying to decide what you're going to be doing with a company, whether to franchise or not. Anything else going on?
A lot going on. So, we just came back. The other thing is, we have a family business. So it's fun to be in business with my spouse. Um, Particularly on this stage where we're looking at all these possibilities. And it's fun. It's also difficult sometimes. It's like, okay, where do you draw the line? But I think we've managed really well. But the thing is, yeah, what's next is, the sky's the limit, pretty much. We want to make sure that we build a company that is a legendary company. It's not just the biggest, but really the most legendary, the one that people are going to remember when they went there with their friends, with their kids, with their partners, and they had a fun time. And it was just that's what really matters to us. And sometimes we don't know whether that is going to be achieved by being the biggest, like, okay, we're going to franchise. We could franchise and have 5,000 stores around the world, but we're in the process of deciding that. We accepted an invitation to go to the Middle East, to Dubai specifically, and Abu Dhabi, and we're talking to them to see whether we can go in that part of the world. But it's just, in the immediate term, we have Bryant Park opening in May, and we have a mall location that should be opening in June, but that hasn't closed, so I cannot disclose.
Stay tuned for more. Well, that's also very exciting, and like I said in the beginning, it's the food is absolutely delicious if you like Belgian chocolate, and the waffles are not like the Aunt Jemima waffles that you're used to in the United States. So check it out if you're in the New York area, for sure. And is there a website or anything that people can go to for more
Yeah,
information?
for more information, you can go to wafelsandingus.com, or you can actually Google Waffle Truck New York. I'll give you tons of information about us and our website and things that have been written about us. We're featured prominently in Yelp, TripAdvisor, all those. But Lonely Planet, we are like a stop in their recommended food tour of Manhattan, things like that. So you can go there. Also, our Twitter handle, Waffle Truck.
Waffle Truck. And spell waffle?
Waffle, well, the Waffle Truck is spelled in American style.
Oh, it is. Okay. So I just want to thank you so much, Rosanna, for being my guest. Another fabulous example of a superb woman.
Thank you, and I hope to see you soon again.
Likewise, likewise. So thank you for joining us tonight. My guest next week will be Valerie Loader. Vanessa Loader. Vanessa I saw speak, and it was one of those people when she was speaking, I'm thinking, she's telling my story. Coming from a corporate background, finding out that a superwoman role doesn't really work, is not a sustainable thing, and now she is the co-founder of Mindfulness-Based Achievement, a company that helps high-achieving, high-potential women leaders learn how to lean in without burning out. So I know you'll be anxious to see that next week here on Superb Woman Sundays at 7. Until then, have a fabulous week.